Hello everyone, today is June 14th, 2019. This is the second Q&A session for our June time crunch. If anyone joins, then we will record the conversation live and everybody can download this later. So I'm experimenting to see whether the video format is easier to handle for YouTube. Last week I did an audio file and then there was some trouble uploading it. So if you still have not had a chance to access the audio file from week 1, let me know and we can find a way to get that to you. So this was a busy week. Thank you so much for all the work you've put into the June time crunch and into the daily challenges. Here's just a quick recap. We talked about habits on Monday. So you defined new habits and you look for ways to maybe replace habits you don't love so much with better ones. And I've heard some great examples. People are drinking more water and they're taking better breaks. All of that is really positive stuff that I'm hoping is contributing to making your work go more smoothly and not feel so stressed about everything you have to do. Then on Tuesday, we looked at our inbox, and there's actually a few questions that I'm going to answer about filtering and about dealing with inbox issues. Wednesday, we looked at reading lists and the stuff that always piles up and there's too much to read and too much to do. Then on Thursday, my challenge to you was to actually time yourself as you are doing about 1,000 words of a normal difficulty translation to see how long it actually does take you from start to finish. We sometimes forget to take certain parts into account, maybe the last polishing that takes you longer than you thought. Sometimes there's formatting issues. You need to calculate those in as well. So once you have that, and you have such a good standard to calculate when new jobs come in, then you are more aware of how much time that will take you, whether to say yes or no, or if you say yes, when will you do this? When will you have enough quiet time, enough focus time to do a good job on that? And that's the first step to building a more conscious daily schedule, and we'll talk about that more next week. The Monday challenge, you'll see, has to do with that. And then today, Friday, the challenge was about positive commitments, making commitments to do certain things more or to do certain things less, and especially to not be so harsh on yourself. When you think about it, no one is allowed to talk to us the way we talk to ourselves. You know, if someone said the same kind of things to you that you say to yourself regularly, you'd have reason to be very offended. This is not nice what we say to ourselves. But the result is also, you could compare it to trying to walk fast in water. Those negative thoughts really slow you down. So when we let go of those, everything just works more easily, and it's just not as much of a challenge to go through a full day with lots of different things to do. All right, so that was the recap for the week. If you're still working on challenges, feel free to put them into the discussion list. Everything you share with us is very welcome, and I love reading all your little comments and your insights and the progress you're making. That is great. So next week we'll start a new channel, so then it'll be week 3 questions, week 3 discussion. Here are some specific questions that I want to answer today. First of all, there was one thread where we talked about the difference between kind of situational stress or disorganization and its counterpart, the chronic variety. So maybe situational stress would be when something new happens in your life. say your job is really stepping up, you're getting a lot more freelance work, and until you get used to that, you may experience some of that clutter and stress from disorganization, or a new family member, a move to a different house. All that stuff can lead to temporary problems because everything needs to find a new home and you need to organize everything. For some people, that's more a chronic challenge that just has been with them for a long time, and then you need new strategies and different approaches. It's not some of the advice that you see in those blog posts we've been sharing when it says, easy, do this, just 15 minutes, and it's a quick fix. Some of that is not a quick fix for you when you're more on the chronic challenge side. So then we'd have to look at different challenges and different situations with the corresponding strategies. I'm going to give a special session on June 18th, that's next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and I will share that again with you. I'll talk specifically about strategies that are helpful with those chronic time challenges. So I will not address that in today's session in an effort to keep all that together. But, if you have specific questions, do phone in and get your webcam going, and I'll be happy to answer your questions here too. All right, I'll start with the questions that were posted in the Slack forum for this week. Adele, you had said that you were looking at a new work area. You said you wanted to break into proofreading and editing, and you were looking at writing courses in addition to that, and you felt that at the moment you were kind of scattered. And so if I understand your question correctly, it was whether you wanted kind of a structured approach for phasing in certain new work areas, or kind of deal with projects as they came in. And maybe that question is of interest too to people who are exploring new areas of specialization and are wondering whether to just wait for those things to come in or take specific steps. So my thought on that is, I think that a structured plan, especially if it goes over a long term, would be helpful here, because you may have to change your marketing strategy. You may have to look at the way you present yourself, the way you respond when customer inquiries come in, both in your old field and in your new one. So any of the deliberate planning that you do in that area probably is very helpful. If you're feeling scattered, there's usually a reason, because you're probably worried about one thing. So a good idea to talk that over with somebody and build a step-by-step plan for yourself with probably accountability or some kind of milestones in there, so you can, after 1 month, check your progress and go, okay, am I really doing what I told myself I would do? And am I moving toward that new goal of switching to a new area of specialty? So that's something, if you have someone who could help you with that, a second person can be very helpful, someone to check in with and to discuss that with. But maybe write it all down first and see where you would like to be in 6 months and what you would like your work reality to look like then. Jessica, you had asked, there was actually 2 questions from you. I'll do the one on income tracking first. There were some answers in the forum about how other people track their income. If you have income from a wide variety of sources and they're paying in different currencies, and as you described it, you're using different channels to receive that money, then it is really important to have them all in one dashboard or one application where just at one glance you go, oh, this person hasn't paid yet and this is still out in here, I need to check that. So that's something to build. Even if you don't work a full schedule yet, build that dashboard now. Some people work in QuickBooks. Yeah, it's all right. It does have some ways to generate spreadsheets. I don't find them all that clear. I don't think that's a strength of QuickBooks to generate those graphics because they typically are not that meaningful. My solution has been to build an Excel sheet where I mark all that stuff down. So I just see when I get started in a new week or a new month, I can tell right away, okay, how much is going to come in this month? What is it looking like? Who owes me money? How much is it? And in which currency? I also thought that probably there were a bit too many channels, Jessica, in your case, of receiving the money. So you may want to, over the course of the next 6 months, maybe reduce that to fewer options so you don't get confused and you don't end up losing oversight of what money is where. There was a little sub-question in there that you put in parentheses, when do I tell a client that their payment is overdue? And my thought about that was the same as the Pantene movie that we watched, the Sorry Not Sorry. You've already done the work. You've sent them the invoice. You've told them what your payment terms are. So to go, well, sorry, you owe me money, isn't really what they need to hear. What they need to hear is your payment is due now. And if you're not really that interested in working with me again, then go right ahead, but I'm busy and I told you my payment term is X. And so I wouldn't be all that nice about it, because we're one of the few industries where people get paid after the fact. I'm actually not aware of any other industry where people are that patient and that tolerant of being paid after the fact, after they've long delivered the work and the work is out of their hands. So, starting from the plumber that comes to your house or any other project that you have done, money always changes hand before the work begins. So I think we have little to be apologetic about in that case. And then Jessica, you had another really good question. So you do a lot of the typically 1-page, 2-page personal translations of, say, birth certificates, marriage certificates, that kind of stuff, which can be a useful practice if you establish yourself as a person who offers those. But you shared that even though it's only 1 page and typically doesn't probably bring in heaps of money, what's time consuming for you is that there's a lot of back and forth with people who need that certified 1-page translation. So it's wasting your time to ask questions and kind of tease out of them what you need to know before you can quote. It occurred to me that maybe it'd be helpful to make a form that has all the information together that you need from this person, so you can send them a PDF, or if you want to get all fancy, you can have it on your website, but tell them, here's my, 10 questions. Here's what I need to know about your document before I can give you a quote, and put the burden back on this person to provide you with that information. And actually then, don't go back and forth with them until they've given you all this information about the document. Then you can come back and give them a reasonable quote. So maybe that's a workable approach. Has anyone else joined? No? Okay. What else did I have on my note here? Time tracking and predicting time. That was the challenge we did this week. my experience has been that a lot of freelancers do not accurately predict the time it takes to complete their projects. And because of that, and then the inevitable distractions coming in and the inevitable pieces of the work that take longer, that's what leads to finding that you need to work extra hours and you need to sacrifice certain activities that actually are important to you. So having that, both the challenge of the stopwatch that I gave you and that little exercise of how good are you at predicting the passage of time, that's good knowledge because it leads to a better understanding of what is your sense of time. And if you have kind of a distorted sense of time, that can be quite difficult. Think of those wonderful friends we all have that love to tell stories. So we run into them and they're lovely people, but they like to tell stories. And it's not that they're looking to waste your time. It's that they have a very, very different sense of how time passes. And they're so delighted to see you. And they want to share so much information in that little time they have with you. And it turns into this burst of storytelling and information sharing. Most likely that is the root, I'm thinking. So interesting to deal with people that have different perception of time, and then adjust your own handling of deadlines and the rest of your daily scheduling accordingly and in line with your own experience and preferences. I had a note here that I was going to say something more about distractions because that's an issue a lot of us face. There's the distractions we allow. So, you know, the notification, the dinging on the phone, the emails, everything that pops up on our screen. So distractions that we say, okay, I'll accept those, but we need to account for how much time it takes to deal with them. And then there's distractions that are kind of not so much under our control. Pets, people ringing the doorbell, the phone ringing, whether it's real calls or spam calls. Other distractions, maybe, you know, the school calling, something happened, people calling because they think, well, I have free time. You must have free time too. Family members. So distraction upon distraction and mental distractions on top of it. So you can think of it as those spheres of distraction. And here you are in the middle of it, trying to do freelance work with as much focus as you can have. We've been working on those distractions that you can control to some extent anyway. So some of the exercises we've done so far in the past 2 weeks have to do with those distractions. The other ones you can obviously not control to the same extent, but you can do more with voicing your expectations. So if you have people who tend to interrupt you during the workday because it's never occurred to them that this freelance time in the morning is just the only time where you're able to work in one block. No one's told them that. So you need to say that. You can't just assume people will be able to know that. You can communicate it and say, I'd love to talk to you, but morning is very important so I can get my work done. Let's talk in the afternoon. So a lot of that has to do with communicating what you need. And it's kind of related to turning off notifications. Your expectation is, I need it quiet, so you can say those things to others. And as soon as you do that, you're asserting what you need, your space needs, your time needs, and that leads to a lot of improvement. We can talk more about distractions if you have specific questions about those. Oh, and here's the last topic that was on my list. I don't see anyone else having called in. Okay, and wait that out a little bit. So I saw in several of the responses to our email inbox kind of challenge, I saw some comments of people saying, well, I have to look at every single thing before I'm comfortable deleting it. Absolutely. If that is your worry that you will lose out on information, and then somebody else also said that they heard that filtering sometimes can lead to deleting more content than you were prepared to delete. So if that is a real concern to you, you may need to check your trash before you actually say final goodbye to it and flush it down. But that's also, you know, that fear of not having all the available information. Oh, hey, Kate. How are you? Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Sorry, I'm so late. I don't know if I missed your start. I mean, I was in another meeting, so maybe I missed the start.
Yes. Well, I was by myself so far, and I just answered questions from the forum so far, but I'm happy to chat with you.
Excellent. So let's see, I was hoping to secretly listen to other people's questions.
Yes, I was in the middle of talking about filtering email and the fear that something may be lost.
Yes, excellent question.
Is that something that's a concern to you? Do you have trouble with trimming email inboxes?
Yeah, I think so. I think I also have a bit of a problem with like spam, potentially spam emails, since I'm working with a lot of international clients.
Right.
It's kind of hard to figure out what is real and what is not. So probably being able to filter the spam more effectively would be something that was useful for me as well. Yeah.
Well, the thought I had, there was one article I shared this week about filtering Gmail.
Yeah.
Some of those strategies seemed awfully radical to me. I thought that may filter out more than I may be willing to give up.
Yeah.
But I've had very good success with filtering out certain keywords, certain phrases that I know are never associated with work offers. So I get a lot of news updates for some reason that are difficult to cut back on. And I found that they all start with breaking news. And I thought, if I filter out all messages that start with breaking, I've never had a client send me anything that started with breaking news, Dorothy, I work for you. So that was an effective one. And I find that really gets rid of those news updates that I would get later anyway, because I'll open the newspaper.
Great. I had another question. I guess I started this month at a residency, so I didn't have access to internet for the first week of our of our time crunch.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to, this seems like such a basic thing, but even, making the half an hour a day when I feel like I'm also catching up on a week's worth of missed stuff has been a bit of a challenge. I was wondering if you had any words of encouragement or insight to, how to negotiate, I guess, time management when you're coming back from being away and already feel like you're behind.
Yes. Yeah, I was in the same boat this week because we ended up having a very unexpected family thing last week. So I was frantically canceling stuff and coming back. So I think, first of all, don't have that expectation that you need to catch up with every minute, right? That you had something else going on. So save the emails maybe, or see the responses in the forum first and see if something catches your eye and then go back to that. It goes back to one of the videos I said is you need to give yourself permission to say, this is how much I can do.
Yeah.
And here's what's super relevant and significant for me. And this is nice to have. And this is what's like totally extra.
Yeah.
So the nice to have is, of course, to learn more and to improve. But if that doesn't fit in with what's really super relevant for you, then just take it in small doses, right? So catching up with, if you say, I'll just look at the challenges. I won't have to do them. I want to find out what they were. And maybe down the line, then you can do them at some other point. Something like that. But anything where you put an extra burden on yourself and you go, oh my God, I need to, do extra, then you'll just be so stressed that the learning will not be valuable for you anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me about your work.
So I'm actually a PhD student as well as a translator. Actually funding the last year of my PhD while translating, and I do some teaching as well. So I have a lot of juggling that goes on. So I spend a certain amount of time teaching on Skype and translating. I mostly do literary translation, but a certain amount of market research translation as well, because that's slightly better paid. But I guess since I'm sort of in the phase of launching things and trying to sort of build up a little bit of a small business while also managing a bunch of other commitments, I feel like I sometimes have too many things going on, which seems to be a common thread here. So I thought, it's at least good to hear about other people who are doing too much and seem to be managing it, or not. But yeah, that's
well, it's kind of a crazy time we live in because there's so much coming at us, right? So like the amount of information that's available is certainly much larger than what previous generations had. And then there's all the stuff that we think we should do. It's really interesting to talk to people who started their freelance careers, say 30, 40 years ago. How did they even pull that off? They didn't have like LinkedIn or electronic resumes, and they managed to somehow.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Rather hopeful.
Right. So we have this idea that everything has to happen all at once, right? That when you're marketing and you have to have a website and everything has to be in place, but somehow that does fall into place.
Yes, indeed it does. Thank you for the encouragement. And also, I'm sorry for coming so late, but I'm glad that you're you're still here. I think that's very, very helpful about, hearing someone's voice in real time, and it's very helpful for getting the momentum going, I guess. Yeah.
Good. So it's just the two of us. I don't have any more topics here. So if you have anything, then we can continue the conversation. I said earlier that I'm going to do a separate session actually on the chronic time challenges next week.
Oh, excellent. Great.
Because I felt that may be easier to deal with it all in one session.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me, and will that be at the same time slot next week?
I was thinking next Tuesday, June 18th at 10 Eastern.
Okay, excellent.
But I can record that as well. Okay. So there's such interesting new data coming out that actually the population that doesn't think in the conventional linear patterns is much larger than previously assumed. It's so interesting. There's this group of people who actually are the authors of all the time management books, and they're the authors of all those blogs with the pretty pictures. And, so they are the minority.
Yeah.
And I find that so amazing that they tell us, like, this is how it's done. Here's how we do it. And there's lots and lots of people who have trouble thinking in terms of a grid.
Yeah.
Their brain doesn't work that way. They can't schedule themselves in a calendar grid because it's so hard to wrap their heads around those little boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm this is also my first time, really dealing with a bunch of other translators. It seems like everyone has such a eclectic experience. It's very encouraging to hear that. Yes. Like everyone's just managing such a diverse range of projects and
and then our brains must have, as linguists, I think we have a special brain anyway, because not a lot of people have that ability to acquire language to the level that we have acquired it, and to actually think, not just in terms of words or phrases, but entire context in two languages.
Yeah, indeed.
Right? And then I would imagine this is a special tribe of people. If you've ever been to a gathering of translators, it's kind of very evident right away who are the translators when you come in, right?
Yeah, I was just at this residency last week, and there were two different programs being held at the same time, and one of them was for translators and the other one was for writers. And right away you can tell who the translators are. And it was really a great experience, but also kind of funny because there was a lot of scheduled programming, and I think at the end of the day, all the translators were like, we're really ready to just go sit by ourselves, and like it's kind of, this hyper awareness of how you seem around people. So wanting to be really friendly, but also like this takes a lot of energy, and everyone just was ready to put down their guard for a little bit and have some alone time. Whereas the writers, you could see, are like just having great time going at it, and especially over the course of the week, the two groups became more and more distinct, I think.
How interesting. Yeah,
it was kind of strange being able to sort of figure out who is who immediately.
When you translate, do you need really peace and quiet? Can you have background noise, or do you need to be in a quiet zone?
It depends what I'm working on. If I'm doing literary stuff, I do need pretty quiet a lot of times, because I actually work mostly on poetry, so I need to listen to it a lot. both the English and the Chinese. But if I'm working on a more commercial project, I can probably have a bit of background noise, but not too much. Mm-hmm. Probably not music, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding is I need to have it really quiet. Sometimes I have to close the door and really create this little bubble when I'm doing difficult work, because it requires such intense focus.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming if that's a common reality, then that would also create a different perception of time.
Yes, and I think the potential for overstimulus is much higher when you need this kind of absolute peace and quiet.
Yeah. So there's actually one feature that people who are distractible, who have attention deficit issues, they go into something called hyperfocus. A lot of artists do that. You know, they go into this zone where they do their most intense work. And when they're in that zone, they don't have a sense of time.
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty relatable. Just go in there. Yeah, it feels like there's also a period of coming out of the translation. Takes a while too, for me.
Yes.
Especially when I'm I've been putting in a long amount of time without a break, and I feel like it takes a good 20 to 30 minutes before I feel like myself again and can interact with people. And
I think you're putting your hand exactly on what the dilemma is here, because in those 20 to 30 minutes it's very difficult to think about invoices or marketing your portfolio somewhere. You just need that time to recover from that intense focus.
Well, I have another class at 12:45, so I need to run. But thank you so much I feel very spoiled getting the one-on-one experience, especially after showing up, nearly 20 minutes late.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope everyone else will as well.
And I'm looking forward to the live stream next Tuesday, or whenever you end up scheduling it.
Okay. I will. You take care. Thanks for phoning in.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye. So I'm actually out of questions here. I have it 12:38, and thanks to Kate for that great conversation. So I believe I've answered all the questions. We'll come back to questions next week. And thank you all for being here. I'll share this recording. Have a great weekend.